Our mind is not always our best friend. Don't believe everything you think. Years and years have gone by, and growing up with my childhood, with my dad the way he was, very feisty, very verbally abusive, and sometimes physically abusive, and I've been that with my kids also. A very difficult father growing up. Learned it from my dad, and I've tried to change over the years, and there's been a lot of great improvements. A lot of prayers said about how can I become a better father and become a more patient person. But our mind's not always our best friend, and living with pain and anxiety and the thought process. When we think something, we may not always be right. Our mind's not always our best friend. Sometimes we what if ourselves to death. We what if ourselves so much that we have too much anxiety and stress and worry that can overcome us. And I've been through this, and it turns into panic attacks. So, my opinion, a panic attack is when, like, let's just say you're filling up your gas at the gas station, and you go in to buy a Pepsi or buy a Sprite or something like that, and you walk into 7-Eleven and you leave that gas filling up in the gas tank in your car. Well, that gets fuller and fuller and fuller, and then sometimes those automatic shutoff valves do not work. Boom, and all that gas just blows out of there and can cause a fire. It can cause catastrophe. So my opinion is that we all deal with different levels of stress and anxiety. We all deal with different levels of stress and anxiety. We're all going to have a little anxiety and stress from time to time, but if it doesn't get up to that 10 and that over explosion area, we're okay. So if it stays down here around 1 or 2 or 3, that's fine. But when it builds up, it causes violence in men and depression in women, and sometimes it causes panic attacks when it gets so out of control. So when stress and anxiety get out of control, in other words, we what if ourselves to death, that anxiety grows up so much that it just causes panic attacks and an explosion, whether it's violence or whatever else. So the mental management part of it is don't believe everything you think. And remember, our minds are not always our best friends. Just because you think something doesn't mean it's real, or it doesn't mean it's true. Just because you think something, it's not going to happen. Okay? So the trick is to verbalize from our verbal thought processes into our mind, our self-talk, what we're saying to ourselves when no one else can hear what we're saying to ourselves, our self-talk, that static that's going on has got to be lessened. And so the more negative, or the more what if the more we worry and the more anxious anxiety filled we get, because we're creating these things that may or may not ever happen in our mind, it can cause that anxiety to go up and cause a panic attack where it explodes and we get violent, or we think we're going to die or something like that. I had 2.5 panic attacks, and I didn't think that they were panic attacks, but they were. And then when I finally acknowledged that I was just overthinking things too much, and I started taking my self-talk to my mind and calming myself and arguing the reality and making reality the true thought process, I calmed down tremendously. And like that gas, when you fill up the gas tank and it overexplodes with gas and could be very catastrophic, I'm able to control that down to a 1 to 3 level now. When I get upset about something now, I actually rate that upsetness compared to 1 to 10. How upset am I really about that customer not paying me the $500 that he owes me? I'm like, I'm probably a 2 or a 3. You know what? If I don't ever get paid from him, it's the way it goes. Now I'm down to a 1. And then I go, you know what? The effort that I put into that job, it isn't worth me worrying about. I would rather work on some new projects and get those taken care of so that they can pay me and not let this other thing I used to literally let other things overtake my entire thought process for months and for years. And I was filled with anxiety and violence and pain. And once I had those panic attacks and stopped believing everything my mind thought, because my mind is not always my best friend, and I started arguing the irrational thoughts. It's called learned optimism. Learned Optimism is an amazing program. It's an amazing CD. Learned Optimism is totally amazing. It helped me calm way down. There's still triggers. There's still things that happen, but I'm able to manage it at a better level now. Don't believe everything you think. Everything you think is not correct. And your mind is not always your best friend. But you have the ability to control your thoughts, which will benefit you, either will negatively or positively benefit your